Part of military service is just that soldiers, airmen, seamen, they're the salt of the earth, and they do a hard job for not a lot of money.
As a veteran, November 11th really marks my call or my recommitment to service. And it's one of those days of introspection where I get to look back, reflect, and really value what's important.
Being a child of a veteran definitely affected my professional development, maybe more than I even realized it would. I saw my dad for 33 years serve his country, and so knowing that I'm serving the country or the world, however you want to look at it, in my own way, means a lot to me as well.
I was really lucky. I just had the best leadership. The people I worked for, the people that I worked with, just exceptionally talented and committed, and I always felt, very lucky to be a part of their team.
I think that we can increase awareness and really promote dialogue with veterans just by asking. I know there's sometimes people might not be comfortable out of respect, but I really do think that if you take the time, understand what it means to us to be a veteran and the experiences that we have.
Veterans Day to me is a time to really reflect and express gratitude towards those that have served our country.